So with this, we are ready to resume and start with our first interview of the day. And for the first interview, I'd like to bring on Stani, who's the founder of Avara Labs. A lot of you may know Stani from being one of the creators of Aave protocol, but today what we're going to do is talk about Lens. And if you haven't heard about Lens already, that's not to worry. We're going to cover a lot more about what it is, where it's going, and how it's been growing so far. So to have this amazing chat, please welcome Stani on stage. Morning. GM. I want to jump right into what we want to talk about for Lens here. So let's not talk about the fluff. Let's go right in. So Lens is now permissionless.
Yes.
What does that mean, and how was that whole process?
Yeah. So I don't know how many of you. Maybe just quick question: how many of you have a Lens profile at the moment?
That is a lot of hands.
That is quite a lot. A lot of pilled people here. But essentially, Lens is a decentralized social network. So what we do at Lens and what the vision is basically is to enable ownership for your social capital, meaning your profile, the connections you make on the internet, and using the blockchain in a way to establish this element of ownership. So it's important because we've all are online all the time. There's 5 billion people on the internet, and almost equal amount of people using social and creating these relationships and content and practically social capital. So with Lens, we started the whole project over 2 years ago, and been building with the same kind of principles that we've done with Aave. So how we can actually use the blockchain and use it in a way that we can democratize either finance, access to finance, or access to social capital with this ownership component that comes from the blockchain. And we started the project in a very kind of like a small, humble way where we didn't really have any answers to all these questions. And social was something really new to us and to our team. And we were building in a way where we wanted to build this decentralized protocol and see the ecosystem to grow down the line. So we didn't have, for example, an application. We built a protocol, participated in one of the ETHGlobal hackathons back in a couple of years ago, and we actually saw developers coming in and building these user interfaces. And during more recently, or actually that's more of a community effort where the Lens community wanted to actually see Lens going permissionless. So previously, you had to actually contact the team or find some different kind of ways to get onboarded to Lens. We whitelisted, for example, people who were participating in ETHGlobal hackathons, folks that were dancing at Rave at 4 a.m. during our events. And effectively what we decided more recently is that, the technology is ripe enough so we can actually open up for everyone. And now Lens is permissionless. And that basically means that anyone can go and mint a profile, and that's a social profile that you actually own. Then that's secured by Onchain, and the connections you make are also secured by Onchain, which is the vision that we're building.
That's awesome. It's been a couple of weeks. What have you kind of noticed so far after going permissionless, and are there kind of any stats you can share on how that's been?
Yeah, surprisingly, when you make things open, people come. So that was certainly something very exciting that we saw spikes in the profiles. Obviously, there are a lot of people probably also here in the audience that has been waiting for a Lens profile, and they were able to mint during this permissionless period. And we've had now 250,000 profiles minted. And as a number, it's quite significant for a couple of reasons. First, it's not a big number if you compare social media space as a whole. but it's a big number when you compare how many of us are actually today interacting with Web3 social. And one interesting part is that to mint a Lens profile, you pay roughly $10 with a card payment, or you pay on an on-chain transaction. And that's a way to basically generate sustainable protocol fees, meaning that this decentralized protocol that we will be building and this shared social network will actually have a treasury that it can actually use then to fund different kinds of projects or redistribute those funds back to the people who are building and using the protocol, and creating a bit more sustainable ecosystem. And as of today, I think there's almost 1 million worth of treasury fees collected to the Lens protocol, which is quite cool. And this monetization component is really fascinating because social media has a lot of monetization. So social media companies in general are the biggest companies in the world. But no one actually, from a user perspective, sees the monetization, because the monetization flow goes from advertisers to the platform, and the user is basically left out of that that monetization supply chain. And by using public blockchain, it means that actually it's all visible. So we all know what is happening on Lens, on this shared social media network, and we also are able to share that revenue, because as a user, you own your audience, the connections you make, they're not locked into a platform. That means that now you can actually have a direct control over how you share content to your audience and share revenue with other users on the network.
That's awesome. I guess one interesting thing that I'm curious to hear about is there isn't a kind of default or primary app to look at Lens, and that seems to be a very intentional decision. So why is it that way, and kind of how do you think about people interfacing with the protocol?
Yeah, it's really interesting question, because it's something that quite a lot of people who are following the space are asking us, that why Lens doesn't have one single entry point application where we can drive the traffic and get people to onboard into the Lens protocol. And there's just another kind of like a narrative that has been for a couple of years about, if you're building Web3, some sort of a project, like should you build a protocol or an application, or even like protocol first, application first. And for us, it was really kind of like an organic choice. So we felt that if you want to build something that is neutral, it's really hard to have one main application that basically drives all the traffic and then competes with all these other applications that are on the network. And especially in the early stage, because in the very early, a lot of the creativity gets inspired amongst these applications that are built, and there's less diversity, but over time, that app diversity will just expand. So what we did is that we simply made the protocol available. What it means is that we deployed on the testnet, code public testnet and the mainnet, and just wanted to see what people built. And to our surprise, people started to build. So starting from weekend hackathons, online hackathons, and then we actually saw businesses being built on Lens. So there's applications that also were able to raise funds to build social media applications on Lens, or even tooling, which was very surprising and created this kind of like a interesting Lens economy. And I think that was probably the best choice we ever made, mainly because if you think about just social media network design, if we have one app that drives all the traffic, what it means is that pretty much the leading app will always determine the social behavior of the network. And our goal is to actually create a social network that is shared, and you have the portability as a user, so you can go from one application to another. You have your identity, but then you're able to choose actually what do you want to share with that application from your identity, social graph, and content. That's the direction we want to go. And it then creates these more heterogeneous networks. And what I mean by that is that if you go from one Lens application to another, they all don't look the same or feel the same because they have their own kind of a content graphs and brings that up diversity, and then that's good for the protocol and protocol revenue too.
That's a very interesting approach. So maybe for people in the audience, what are some of the interfaces that they can check out to use Lens?
There's quite a lot, actually. There's a lot of, we quantified that there is probably 400 different projects being built on Lens, and some are less active, so some are more active. Some are basically open source projects, and some are fully focused on actually consumer audience, mobile experience. Just to mention a couple of these, Orb.club is an interesting project because these two founders actually met in ETHGlobal hackathon. They were randomly hacking on Lens protocol, and both of these founders didn't have previous social media experience, but they got excited about the idea of like, what if we have this global shared social network that anyone can just tap into, share monetization. So that's a very interesting application because they've been building on mobile since the very beginning, and people love it on Lens. And another application is Hey, which is more of an open source project. Also started in a very small environment where they participated in an online hackathon, and people just started to use
that one is just still one person, is that right?
That's a one-person team. Yeah, many of these teams that build on Lens are really small, and that's really amazing. You don't really need a big team to build on Lens because the protocol does a lot of the heavy lifting and the tooling that has been built either by the team or by the community. And Hey is actually open source, so if anyone wants to even change, how a button looks on Hey, or adding a feed or doing any kind of modifications, you can actually go and do a pull request. And that's the beauty of a open source development on social, because you have these global clients that can actually can take any contributions. But also, Lens is not just about text. You have video applications as well. Tape XYZ is a good example.
Oh, great. Yeah. So maybe this leads to my next question, which was, it's not just that this is just an on-chain social graph. The goal here is to actually extend it and think about some native Web3 integrations or just features. So what are some of those here on the protocol? And namely, kind of just let's talk about open actions.
Yeah. So obviously the idea of Lens is also to enable creativity and also enable new kind of ecosystem where builders can actually create and expand the protocol. So as of today, you can go and create modules that expand any kind of a social networking behavior, or you can plug in to Lens with the open actions. So open actions is a way to actually extend Lens protocol in a way where if you have created something really cool, but you don't want to build an app, or maybe you have an app and you have a lot of traffic, but you actually want to see that social behavior or action happening directly on the Lens and Lens applications, you can create an open action and plug into Lens. Now, what it means actually is that you're creating a piece of smart contract code that basically interacts with Lens protocol and makes the protocol more composable. And simple thing I could give an example is that you can, for example, vote on governance directly on a feed. You can swap ERC20 tokens, ERC71s directly on the feed. So what we're saying is that a lot of this economical activity and any kind of on-chain activity doesn't need to happen on a specific application, but it can actually happen directly on the feed where the user's attentions are. And obviously, open actions are built in a way, not just in composability mind, but monetization. And I think that's really powerful in on-chain social is that because we're using the on-chain element so much, you can actually build monetization to these open actions and share fees. So you can program an open action in a way that you share fees, whoever creates content, and also you can distribute the fees between the applications and algorithms and anyone that is part of that attention cycle as well. And I think that's really powerful.
In this kind of world, there's the Lens engineering team, there's the community, and then there's kind of the broader ecosystem of Lens users. how do you think about actually improving the protocol, and sort of whose decision is it, who's involved? How do you think about getting real feedback? Like, do you just treat the comments from the people with the most amount of users or the most amount of value being driven? Like, how did you actually improve the protocol in this world?
A very exciting question, because the way I've built protocols in the past is that, especially in DeFi, security is really important, right? So building something, that holds billions worth of value is a kind of a different type of a category compared to, for example, social, where, you're providing more of ownership to social capital and functionality on social networking. So what I notice is that there's a lot of appetite to actually contribute to Lens. And we have this framework called Lens Improvement Proposals, and it follows a little bit the same framework as the Aave improvement proposals or Ethereum improvement proposals, where anyone can come and actually open a lib. And a lib is basically a proposal or a discussion about some sort of a protocol improvement. And it doesn't really have to be necessarily related directly to the protocol or the parameters. It can be just standardization between applications that have integrated, for example, Lens. So that's a very open, collaborative way to build Lens. And surprisingly, there are actually developers that really are already contributing to the Lens protocol outside of the team. And I was surprised how quick this progress has been. And I think also because it's a little bit easier to build on a non-financial network. And I think it's so early that there is so much to actually contribute and build. And I just think Lens in general, it's so in its early stage that there's a lot of evolvement and developments that can be done. So it's very community-driven development. But our team is excited to set out a new vision as well, what we want to contribute in the future, and bring that vision as well to the community and see what actually makes sense and what people get excited about.
Awesome. Maybe just to focus on just one example, like what's been a good feedback you've received from the proposal so far, or just even anecdotal from kind of going permissionless? Has there been something that's been super requested?
Yeah, I think what people are excited about, how these apps will share monetization amongst each other and with the protocol. So now there was a lib 16 recently that was merged, which basically means that all these all the monetization that happens on Lens, for example, for paid collect. So people are creating content, they're tokenizing it, and other users are collecting it. Really great way to monetize for creators. Paid follows. A lot of this economic activity is happening on Lens, and lib 16 actually collects a little bit of protocol fees for these activities. And now, kind of like the next question is, and what we're trying to think in the Lens ecosystem is that how these different applications will share protocol fees and any fees that are on top of that. So an example is that you might create content or create content on one application, let's say on Orb, and someone else collects it on, for example, Hey, and how these apps distribute fees amongst each other. And I think that's where the real power of shared social network comes, when actually everyone who is contributing on application level, they're also sharing the upside and benefiting of building on a shared infrastructure. And I think that's going to be really, really cool.
Nice. Well, as kind of my last question here, I want to get a little bit more philosophical. Do you think that it is possible to have a decentralized social network that scales and it is kind of ultimately successful by some definition? And obviously you're betting on this, so the answer is yes. But kind of what do you think is required for us to get there?
Yeah, that's a good point. So when it comes to scale, there's two scaling questions. One is the technological scaling, and the other one is that will people care or use decentralized social? I think from the technical scaling solution, obviously Lens is today on Polygon, and I think the future of scaling, I think the whole Ethereum ecosystem has done a lot of work on scaling to this point. So we have rollups now where a lot of the scaling happens, and I personally think rollups is going to be the place for doing financial transactions and having protocols like Aave and DeFi there. But when it comes to social transactions, we have to go one way above and basically figure out a way to scale. So same goes with gaming, where we need certain amount of security. So we have that on-chain component, but we don't need the same amount of security, for example, that a DeFi protocol needs on L2s. So that's something we're working on from the technical perspective, and I think we're gonna be able, with our next technical commitment, to scale to, I think, roughly 50 million transactions per second. And just to give...
Did I hear that right? 50 million, is it?
Yeah, 50 million transactions per second.
Okay, this is going to be fun.
Just to give an example, Twitter, during a FIFA World Cup endgame, they had 30 million transactions per second. So that's pretty much what you need for technical scale, I would argue. And obviously, then you can still do financial transactions, and you can use rollup for those. And then the question about whether people will use decentralized networks, I think it's about rebuilding the internet. That's what we're here for, right? So we're basically just rebuilding the financial ecosystem, the internet in general, in a way where there is more user ownership. It's more equitable, and you have more neutral networks that basically benefits the people. And I think that as a protocol, Lens probably will be something that the mainstream users will not really put a lot of attention once it scales. It's just an infrastructure, same as, for example, the IP protocol or email as a protocol that just is in the background. And then most of the actual value to the users will happen with these different algorithms and use cases and applications through their experiences effectively. And I also think that to get more people into the Web3, we have to build new experiences. So end of the day, a lot of people participate in crypto Twitter, and those networks are very strong, and they will get people back. But to get new audiences, we just have to build new experiences. And I think that's where the app developers can actually thrive. And if they have the best tools in terms of monetization, ownership, and that's something that Lens is providing, they have far better chances to succeed. And if their application doesn't succeed, they have far better chances and also monetization already to maybe try another application. And every single app that is built on the shared network, it just compounds the user base and compounds the opportunity for everyone to come and build and succeed.
I think that's a very optimistic note to end on, Stani. This has been a wonderful chat. So thank you so much.
It's almost bull market, so I had to be a little bit optimistic.
Well, I can tell, because 50 million transactions, I think we need a second talk today. Well, thank you so much for taking the time, and can't wait to have other people trying that too.